Well, well, good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us at Harif, the UK Association of Jews from the Middle East and North Africa. Our mission, as many of you know by now, is to educate about the history, culture, and heritage of Jews from the Middle East and North Africa. We are a very small group of volunteers who try to sort of achieve this impossible mission. We are what's called a non-profit in America, or a charity. Um, and we've been running these Zoom calls for about 5 years now. We have a website, www.harif.org. To receive details of our Zoom events, you have to subscribe to our mailing list. It's free, and you will get Zoom details on a regular basis. We have a sister website, which is a news blog called Point of No Return. You can also subscribe to that to get daily emails. And the easiest way to access it is by clicking on news on the Harif website. This session is going to be recorded, or it is being recorded at the moment. We hope to have the recording up in a matter of hours, if I can get my act together. And please do browse through our collection of recordings. We have over 100 lectures on the video channel. Just click on videos on the Harif website. There will be an opportunity to ask our speaker, our guest, some questions, but please do put them in the chat. Um, and hopefully there will be an opportunity for him to answer some of these questions. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker. I'm delighted to have Hakham Isaac Choua with us. He is joining us from New York. He was actually born in the US, but he hails from a long line of Lebanese Jews. And he will tell us how, as we celebrate the high holidays, his community's traditions have shaped him. Now, Hakham Choua has been active in promoting Sephardi heritage and Torah wisdom. And he also takes a lively interest in current affairs. He's a frequent contributor to X, formerly known as Twitter. And since the 7th of October massacre, he writes often for his Substack column, which is called Struggling in the Wilderness. So for the next 40 or 45 minutes, I have the honor and privilege to be talking to Rabbi Choua. And I will kick off with this question, which is, can you tell us more about your Lebanese background? I know you were born in the US of Lebanese Jewish parents. Um, and they seem to have left quite late in 1977. Why did they stay so long? And what made them leave?
So thank you very much for that kind introduction. I appreciate it. Um, you know, obviously I'm an American, but the Lebanon has always had a deep tie to me. Obviously because my parents, but also because of Torah in general and the relationship there between Lebanon and the Jews and this deep connection. You don't spend one Shabbat without hearing Lebanon in the Bet Knesset in the synagogue. But my parents, as you noted, they left in 1977, at least my father's side of the family, and it was really hard for them. Obviously speaking on behalf of my parents, because we've been there for centuries. When you have a deep connection to the land, for many Lebanese people, it wasn't really so distinct from the land of Israel. Some parts of Lebanon was actually one day Yom Tov. So for people who don't know, if you're within the jurisdiction of Jerusalem, a certain mileage, a 3-day hike, you would be considered under the jurisdiction of Jerusalem, and you would only have 1 day Yom Tov. So Pesach would be 1 day instead of 2 days, or 8 days versus 7, depending how you want to measure it out. So the connection has always been there. When you have homes, my family had, we're blessed to have at least two homes, one in the mountains, one in Beirut, and you don't want to leave that. You've built everything you have. So the same way that many Jews around the world, when they've really settled their roots in us for many generations, it's very hard to leave it. And the connections and friendships have been there. And after Lebanon actually got its emancipation, the relationships between the community, the Jewish community, and the Christian community were growing stronger. Um, and even before that, when my family lived in Del Amar, the relationship was very strong with the Druze community. There was actually the kind of the capital of Lebanon, so to speak, or the capital of Shuf was like more of a mountainous terrain area, was actually a Druze king, let's say, a sultan. So he actually protected the Jews and helped actually build a synagogue, which when back then, especially under the Ottoman Empire, you need to get a lot of permission just to make that happen. So the relationship has went with the Christians, the Druze, even the Muslims in a certain extent, and it's family. Even if you want to look historically, it's always been family. Even with Yehuda, and I know you mentioned my name earlier of is it Yehoshua? Is this? So actually, Shua is actually in the Tanakh, and it actually refers to someone who is of the region. Bat Shua. She actually marries Yehuda, and she also Bathsheba's other name is also Bat Shua. That's also in Divrei Yamim. So it's really much a name of the land. It's very much tied to it. Our family goes back generations. And people, when they think of Lebanon, sadly, sometimes they think of a war torn, but they don't go that deep. And when I say deep, I mean Jewishly deep. Like, Shevet, like Yehuda spent time there. Even Zebulun, who has a kever there, who has a cave there where he was buried, is actually in Sidon. And then you also have the deep ties between King David and Shlomo and Hiram, who is the builder of David's palace, which we're uncovering more and more every day in Israel, and also the first temple as well. And Hiram, the king of Sur, of Tyre, he actually says he beloved David, which isn't a common word. You see that often. So the relationship and the ties have always been deep, and they've accelerated even more so. They had a pagan period, right? They had a pagan period with Jezebel and Ahav, and obviously our kingdoms combined, but it wasn't under like what would be considered good terms in that sense. Obviously, financially they were well, but it wasn't like Torah values. But as time progressed with Christianity, the relationship deepened even further again. And we under this Abrahamic umbrella. And even with the Druze community, the Druze kind of harken back to Yitro. That's who their mythological ancestor is. Who they attribute to, and who's had a big, deep impact on the Jewish community in general. Because if it wasn't for Yitro, we wouldn't have the Sanhedrin, we wouldn't have the Knesset that we see in Israel today. He was the lineage that kind of systemizes our government, the Judean government. So we kind of owe everything to the Druze in that sense. And the people from then are the people from now. So you even see these deep ties with the Jewish community as you see in Israel, obviously in different locations because of politics, but hopefully with our history, we can kind of move it forward. A lot of times people say, "Oh, we're building bridges," but luckily I have the eyes of my father and my ancestors in general, right? So we're not building bridges. There's this beautiful train station actually. I mean, not train station, but train rail that came from Beirut to Haifa to Lod, and my grandfather would travel it. My grandfather would go travel to go to Jerusalem, and we've seen the bridges. They exist. It's not rebuilding anything. It's not building anything. It's rebuilding it.
Yeah. Did your parents ever talk to you about how they left? Did they share any memories of what it was like living in Lebanon, and perhaps the fear that they went through during the Civil War there?
So the fear, it always lingered in a sense. It's very hard to kind of describe because it wasn't like in the other countries where it was very much government orchestrated. where the government was very much pro-Jewish, and pro-Jewish, maybe it's a strong term, but definitely did protect the Jewish community. So I believe it was during the Yom Kippurim War, where the government actually sent soldiers to Wadi Abu Jamil to protect the Jews.
The Jewish quarter in
Yeah, the
Beirut.
Jewish quarter, where majority my father's family is older than that area, so they lived in a different area, but my mother's family lived in Wadi Abu Jamil, and they were protected by the government. They sent soldiers, and it was more very much in lockstep. Even earlier on in 1948, you had the head of the Maronite priest. I forget his name. I forget his full name. I know I think it's Ignatius Mubarak.
Yeah,
He actually was a Zionist in a sense. He supported the Jewish state. They actually signed a memorandum with the federations in then British Mandate of Palestine to recognize it as a state. So the relationship was always there, whether it was very loud, very not everyone's playing political games, or even hosting some of these people in the synagogues, which was Maghen Avraham, which we're actually going to be nearing its 100th year anniversary, which still exists today, which is great. It went through a couple of destructions. We could talk about that if you'd like as well, but it's actually going to be 100 years old next year.
right.
So
Yeah,
the relationship was there, and then obviously once Black September happened in Jordan, which was a large massacre of Palestinians in Jordan because the PLO was trying to establish a state within a state. A lot of the PLO fighters went to Lebanon, and then there was a bunch of Palestinian camps that UNRWA kind of set up, and they were instigating issues there, and it kind of escalated into a civil war between the Muslims and the Christians, and obviously we got caught in the middle.
right.
So,
Yeah.
um,
So
yeah.
you mentioned the Maghen Avraham synagogue, which of course was ruined and has been rebuilt and renovated, but has never opened. And actually, it's just reminded me that of the fact that you built a Lego model of this synagogue, which I thought was absolutely amazing. How long did it take you to build it?
Let me see if I could actually pull it up, so maybe I feel bad if no one gets to see it. But so I didn't physically build it because the price for it was astronomical. But I did spend quite some time building it because for me, I kind of most Lebanese people, I wouldn't even say just me, we live in the nostalgia of our parents if we've never actually been there. And all Lebanese people, at least a lot of the ones that I've met, live in this nostalgic world. And I was very sad to hear that I might not ever see it because we never know what's going on in Lebanon. Every day it's a different, something else is happening. So actually, I don't know if anyone could see this. Can anyone see this?
Fabulous. Yes, yes, we can see it.
Sure. This
Beautiful.
is the inside of it. Um, and then
Fabulous.
picture, and this is a comparison to what it actually looks like.
Yeah.
So I got it pretty close. Thank
It's very close.
you
So
very much.
so you actually, replicated it as closely as possible. I
Yeah,
mean,
I did, and I actually have my this is a different synagogue. This is actually my aunt outside of the quarters, my great aunt, Evelyn Choua, who was a doctor in Lebanon, and they
yeah,
also had Bikur Holim there, so she would, to help people as well. So this is
right.
actually outside in the quarter. It's a family member of mine.
So your family were sort of pillars of the community, from what I see. They were very involved in
Yes,
community
yes,
life.
very, very involved. Well, when you're there
Right,
for that long, how can you not be?
right. Okay, so how did you celebrate the high holidays? As we've just had Rosh Hashanah and we're about to have Yom Kippur, were there any distinctive customs that you had which other communities did not have?
So it's hard to make a comparison because I haven't visited all the communities. Usually the high
Yeah, of
holidays are
course.
usually with
Yeah.
family, so you're always that in. But I could focus on something that once I left my Lebanese community in Brooklyn and moved to Long Island, there was one tradition that I sorely miss and I think about quite often for Yom Kippurim because it's coming up, so I might as well bring that one up. So we have this tradition during Neila, which is like the last Amida, I guess, portion. We have these five of them on Yom Kippurim. And there's a song, El Nora Halila, El Nora Halila. So like as that song comes in to kind of welcome you in, and everyone's already it's like the last prayer, everyone's tired, everyone's hungry, and everyone's singing this song, and it's so uplifting, and you just feel a waft of a smell come into the synagogue, and it's mazahir, which is orange blossom, and all the priests, all the kohanim, would actually wash their hands with orange blossom and water, and they would just bring in this smell to kind of rejuvenate everyone in the room. And you have like 30 kohanim walking in. You have 800 people in this room just singing this song, bringing everyone up when it's like you're at the end, you're at the final part, and
Yeah,
that I think I'll never forget those memories. Sadly, I don't have them in my current synagogue. Maybe I'll try to institute it,
yeah,
but that's something that I haven't really seen anywhere else, and it really uplifts you. And then when you come home, you actually have more items with this orange blossom as well. We put it in our lemonade. We put it in this dish. It's called menorah, which is like I guess it's like a cold soup. I don't really know how to explain it aside from that, but it's like an apricot dish with nuts and orange blossom, of course, and it's and you kind of like eat that as well. So those are
right.
the kind of like traditions that I think of very fondly. I've been to other synagogues. When it comes to Sephardim, we're almost pretty much the same. It's the tunes. When it comes to Ashkenazim, it's the pizmonim. The liturgy is a bit different. Our focus there is a bit different than theirs, especially
Mhm.
on Rosh Hashanah as well. The focus is very different. So it's something to think about.
Right.
That would require more of a like a shiur comparative liturgy.
Yeah. No, we won't get into that just yet. Can you tell me again the name of this dish with the orange blossom which you broke apart
I
from?
can write it in the chat.
Yeah. Okay. No, it's
Sure.
fine. So it must be very tempting for the Kohanim not to drink the orange blossom. You
Luckily,
know.
they had someone washing their hands for them, so they're not, it's wash and you walk out. It wasn't.
Yeah, yeah, you walk out. Yeah. No.
I
No.
actually have an article on Lebanese Jewish cuisine in the Encyclopedia of Jews from Islamic Lands, so I'm happy to share that as well with the group if they want to. It
Oh,
has
wonderful.
all the stuff like that.
Lebanese cuisine, Jewish
Yeah,
cuisine.
Lebanese Jewish cuisine. Yeah.
So give us an example of the distinctive Jewish cuisine. How does it differ from Lebanese, non-Jewish cuisine?
Okay. So there's actually this one dish that I haven't seen it in any of the Christians or Muslims as well, and I think the reason is it's called kibbeh hamod. I
Hmm.
don't know if everyone here has heard of it, but it's like a lemony dish. We always have it on Shabbat. It's a must-have.
Yeah,
Depending on the region, it's made a little differently. Like if it's in Aleppo, it's they put tomatoes in it and things like that. They like to make everything red in Aleppo. But in
yeah,
Lebanon and Damascus, it's more lemony. It has um, potatoes. It has like kibbeh. I don't know how to. It's like a dumpling. It's like a
yeah,
meat dumpling,
yeah,
and it has celery and it has mint, depending on
yeah.
your community,
Hmm.
and garlic.
Right.
So the thing is, the what I've seen in the Christian community and the Muslim community, they have something similar to it,
Yeah.
but it's with adas, so the lentils. But
Lentil.
because we have a very deep uh, disdain of having lentils during Shabbat or Rosh Hashanah or Rosh Chodesh, we don't have lentils because
Is that
it's a sign of mourning. So
right?
we removed it and it became pretty much its own dish.
Okay, interesting. And is it sweet and sour,
It's,
Ahmad, or is
it's
it just
I would just say it's sour. Hamad,
sour?
yeah,
Right.
even in like Lebanese Arabic, hamad actually translates to lemon, even though
Yeah.
it means like haymutz. It means like sour.
Sour, sour. So you
Yeah.
don't add sugar like the
It's like
Iraqi
yeah,
add sugar.
it's a lemony dish.
Yeah.
Lemony.
Right. Okay. Well, that's fascinating. And you wrote a section on Jewish cuisine, Lebanese Jewish cuisine for the Encyclopedia of Islamic
Of Islamic lands, of Jews from the Islamic lands. It's
Jews.
uh, it's an encyclopedia by Norman Stillman, or
Right.
Norman. So he has like this large encyclopedia of just
Yeah.
everything. I recommend everyone read it. It's very expensive to buy it though. I wish I
Absolutely.
owned a copy.
Yeah, prohibitive. Yeah, so that's fascinating. So um, you have touched upon the relationship of Lebanon to Eretz Israel and the fact that Lebanon came under the jurisdiction of Jerusalem, and there was only one, you only observed one Yom Tov.
It
You
depends
mentioned
where in Lebanon, not all of
yes,
Lebanon. So
not everywhere.
from
Yeah,
Sidon downwards would be
right.
the kind of cutoff line.
Yeah,
So funny enough, when everyone was moving to Beirut in the early 1900s, late 18th century,
yeah,
Jews from Sidon would come to Beirut and they
yeah.
would want to do one day Yom Tov, and everyone's like, no, we don't do this here.
We don't do that. No, we can't let you off the
Right.
hook.
The thing is, you need a long-standing community. It's not only like a 3-day hike, it has to be a long-standing community. And Beirut was relatively a new community once the French mandate was kind of taking on.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. So, I know you were interviewed by the author of this book here,
Oh, yes.
The Jews and
Harif Freeman.
Indigenous People. So, I mean, can you tell us a bit about your feelings about the actual indigenous identity of Jews from Lebanon. I mean, how do they feel? Do they feel they belong? They're just an extension of the Jews of Eretz Israel. Is that it?
So, even when I was like younger and I'll talk to my father, like, oh, it's, how do we categorize ourselves? And he's like, oh, we're very much close to the Yerushalmi tradition.
Mm,
But it wasn't necessarily exactly an exact copy, but people kind of think of a world of lines when everything is really just like a graying of another area, right? It's like the further away you are, you're similar, but you're not exactly the same. And there
mm,
needs to be like kind of that understanding of like how we frame our minds and how we think about these things. So when it comes to indigenuity, especially for Jews in general, and I wouldn't just exclude, I wouldn't just make it just only Lebanese Jews,
uh, uh,
uh, there is a legal definition within the UN, and that's within the framework of the book itself. So
mm,
that's what he's working off when he wrote the book, my good friend Ben. And we spoke a lot about what it means to be, and I kind of speak about this a lot in on X as well.
mhm,
And a lot of people think that being Jewish or Judaism is, and this might shock people, is a religion. I don't really ascribe to that. The
mm,
word religion after the Rome, after it comes out of Latin and becomes more Christianized, originally the word religio would actually mean bind, to bind yourself to these, to certain ideas. But then later on, once you kind of get to Augustine and other people in the Christian world, it means something else completely, and then it
mm,
kind of separates itself from what we believe. So the word
mm,
even Judaism actually is a word that we coined.
mm,
Um, so for once, we coined something about ourselves, which is nice. It actually comes from the Book of Maccabees too, and it actually denotes Judean culture. And for us, culture, what is culture? It's nomos, which means law, which is Torah. So
mm,
it's really about binding ourselves to, Jewish law and to understand ourselves in that aspect. A lot of people call ourselves a religion, but at the same time they'll use slogans like Am Yisrael Chai, but they won't realize that like what is an Am? What is Israel? Like they become slogans and don't think deeply about what it actually means. And Am, as we all know, means people, it means a nation. And we've so much Judeo-Christianized ourselves in a sense where we forgot that when we talk in our native language, we don't actually mean the things we say when we translate it into English. So it's really about people reclaiming their Hebrew and understanding what it really means. Because if you don't unpack I really deeply believe that a people make a language and a language makes a people. It's very symbiotic. You have to like work back and forth. And then once you have like a canonized text like the Torah, which, I always tell people the most important verse in Torah, which is going to surprise maybe a lot of people, is Torah siva lanu Moshe morasha ki elat Yaakov. And a lot of people like, they think it's like, wait, shouldn't it be the Shema? But actually, Maimonides, when he actually, I have a child now, so when he says, the first verse you teach your child is that verse. It's Moses charges with the Torah. It's our inheritance of the congregation of Yaakov. So
mhm,
once we kind of really instill what it means to be our inheritance, what does it mean to be the Keilat Yaakov, to be part of this larger group of people, then we could really find God together as a nation, as we did in the desert, right, in the wilderness, right? We found God at Har Sinai. We all had revelations. We're all, the sons of prophets. We heard and saw God. And whether you believe in that as a historical fact or even in part of the mythos, it very much makes our identity, because every memory that we hold dear and we elevate really encapsulates who we are.
But what if you are a secular Jew who actually may not believe in God? I mean, how do you how would he explain his identity? I mean, is that valid?
So I don't. What would be their identity outside of Torah? That would be my question to them. So for example, even in I'm sorry, I know this is a very British audience, UK
Oh, no,
audience,
they're completely international.
but in America we have this thing we tell little kids, like, George Washington chopped down the cherry tree and then he admitted to the lie. I mean, admitted to it and he didn't lie, like he was an honest broker. And
Mhm.
obviously we know it's a myth, but it's a story that we hold dear to show how honest and earnest he was. Because at the end of the day, what did George Washington do? The country of America didn't really exist, in my opinion, until George Washington stood down. Until he retired, the country was just a test, and he could have said, you know what, I'm not going to step away from my power. But he said, you know what, I'm going to hand it off to the next generation. So that story of he didn't chop, he admitted that he chopped down the cherry tree, even though he did something wrong, fine, but he admitted to it and he was honest about who he was. That's very much indicative of the whole American ethos, and it becomes part of the myth of America. So the same thing with, and I don't use the word myth in a negative sense when I talk about Torah, and that term sadly has become made into a joke, like a myth means something fake. But it's a myth really is about what a nation tells itself. And if you don't understand what the nation tells itself, it's very hard to understand what a nation is. If you're not involved into the national community and you think, being Jewish is, I don't know what the equivalent in the UK is, but let's say fish and chips. I just assume everyone thinks that's Sephardic, we're good. But if
Yeah.
not, in America, it's lox and bagels or eating pickles or any of these types of things. That's nice that you have your niche Jewish experience in the Ashkenazi world, but it doesn't really speak to me as a Sephardic Jew. So, what kind of unites us? What is our ultimate thing? And our ultimate thing is our history, our legacy. And what's our foundational myth and foundational story? It's the Torah. It's that legacy. It's that, we were brought out of Egypt. Whether you believe it or not is irrelevant. It's what we believe as a nation, right? That we were brought out of Egypt, that we experienced the first temple experience, the second Commonwealth. We had all these experiences together. And I think it's important that don't, even if you don't believe in it, you should still study your own constitution in a sense. And that's how I
Right.
kind of view it. I'm sorry to come from a very American constitution experience, but that's how I think of it in that sense. Because I think a
No.
lot of the founding fathers were very much, because they were very Protestant in that sense, a lot of them kind of went back to the Bible and to the roots, and a lot of their ideas kind of stem from there.
Right. Okay. So we are struggling to assert a sort of separate Sephardi, I wouldn't say Sephardi identity, but perhaps to revive Sephardi culture and heritage, aren't we? I mean, isn't it an uphill struggle because you've got that word Ashkenormative,
Yeah.
that the Ashkenazi culture seems to dominate, and perhaps also Ashkenazi rabbis, everybody knows about the Hasidim and all the stories. And so how can, we reassert Sephardi culture and, heritage?
Yeah. And it's going to be an uphill battle because a lot of the texts have not either been translated or haven't been passed on to generation or generation. So a lot of times in schools, maybe you'll learn something about Hakham Kalai, who's, like, I would say one of the founders of political Zionism in a sense, and people don't really think about him that way, right?
Mhm.
So, um, and like, what does it even mean to be a Zionist for, Hakham Kalai anyways, right? So there are a lot of things that we need to unpack and understand, because some of these terms have already been defined for us, right? In a sense where the term Jew doesn't mean Sephardic Jew, it typically means Ashkenazi Jew. That term has kind of been taken in that sense. And it becomes on us to kind of take it back. But even just to go further back and not just to focus on that, I like the term Ashkenormativity, but I also don't like it at the same time because the term Ashkenormativity, it points to a real problem, but at the same time, it also makes you into this victim mentality. Once you kind of set a word for yourself, you kind of use that word so often that you victimize yourself because like, oh, it's the Ashkenormativity, rather than dealing with the issue itself. And I think, you know, the real, it's a real problem that the Jewish people don't know their history. And when I say the Jewish people, I mean all of us, right? It's sad that only recently, maybe after October 7, maybe a lot, more people learned about the Farhud because one of the captives, one of the people that were captured and were taken to Gaza were actually a Farhud survivor, and that's
Mm.
when people learned about it and learned
Yeah,
about how we were connected and why that Farhud started and how it actually had to do with the Nazis and this new form of anti-Semitism. I mean, this new anti-Semitism went to the Islamic world, and like people are learning about it now. And even after October 7, I've seen a large jump in these these influencers who are actually Sephardic and they're actually giving their Sephardic story and their Sephardic spin on these things, and people are learning about it, which I think is very important. But at the same time, we have to understand there's more depth to it, right? Like everyone's giving us an appetizer because sadly, Twitter and TikTok and all these things, it's only what 2 minutes, so you're not really getting the whole story. You're just getting an appetizer. So as people are getting more hungry to learn about Jewish history, learn about their history, right? It's very important. In the 1970s, Israel had a history book on Jews, and there was this famous artist. I'm sorry I didn't pull up the image now. Maybe I can find it later. That actually held up a book of the history of all the Jews, and I believe there was 9 pages out of 400 that talked about Sephardic Jewry.
that's
Nine
right. Yeah,
pages,
I've
and
got
this
it in
was
my book. That
yeah,
book.
and and I looked into it further. I believe 16 pages were on American Jewry and didn't even focus on the Sephardic aspect of American Jewry, the early
Oh my,
American. So
yeah.
there is an uphill battle in education. I know Naftali Bennett, when he was the prime minister, he pushed more for this Sephardic, education. You have the Dahan Center in Israel, but it's imperative for us to push and ask for more, and not because for our sake. Oh, I care about Sephardic Jewry
It
because it's
is.
Sephardic. Like invite your Ashkenazi friends because they're complete, and we need to be able to understand each other's struggles and also the great things about our cultures, right? We can't always focus on the negative. And I know there are some, aspects of Jewish community that they just worry about the negativity all the time. And that's not
Mm.
who we are. We existed before the negativity, right? And, just to kind of quote, Emma Lazarus, an American poet, a Sephardic American poet, you know, who when I don't know if anyone is aware. Is everyone know who she is? So Emma
Yeah,
Lazarus was the poet who actually penned the poem on the Statue of Liberty. Her poem was
yeah.
actually the poem that actually helped it set its foundation because it didn't have the money for the foundation. So she wrote this beautiful poem, and people are like, okay, I'm going to donate to it, and then it erected the Statue of Liberty. But
Right.
when you read the poem, it's talking to us because you know her experience. And she also wrote a book called The Epistles to the Hebrews, which was to us, and also a plea to the Jews that were facing problems in Russia at the time. And she wrote, "Until we are all free, none of us are free." And you can
Mm.
only say that if you understand the depth of what it means to be Jewish, if you understand the Jewish experience. And you can't feel for each other if you don't know each other. And that's why I
Mhm.
go back to the beginning what I was saying before about the Torah. Like that's our ultimate, our foundational what makes a Jew a Jew. And whether you believe in it or not is irrelevant. Once you bind yourself to that experience, that's what makes it important, right? You can't enjoy Pesach to the fullest extent if you don't study why we left, what happened during Passover, what we were fighting against.
Yeah, she wrote "Give Me Your Huddled Masses," didn't she? I mean, it was a
Yeah,
sort of ode to America and the fact that America was a haven for the Jews, the golden land.
yeah.
Um, but as you say, there is this history of migration, of the fact we had to move around from place to place, and that's part of the Jewish experience.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think one of the big things that people we recognize on a very surface, maybe on a deeper level, not a surface level, is that we went through a big horror. We all know that. The Shoah affected all Jews, you know, Ashkenazi, Sephardi, even in the Middle East, in North Africa, people don't even know there were labor camps there as well. And even what happened after you had the Libyan pogroms, right? So we went through this big catastrophe, and then we went through another big catastrophe in 1948, which I'm not saying Israel's a catastrophe, but the reaction to it was, which pushed a lot of Jews from the Middle East and North Africa. So a lot of these communities have shifted drastically. And the last time we've kind of really experienced that was, during the Crusades, during the Inquisition, and usually you have this large awakening period and rebuilding of communities. But now with the communities that we have today, people are still using the same structures, they are trying to use the same structures that we used in the past to kind of build the community that we have now. And they're not really building a new structure. You have more Ashkenazim in Sephardic areas, you have more Sephardim in Ashkenazi areas, you have a lot of them mixed. And, for me, Ashkenazim and Sephardim have been long-time pen pals. We've been friends, family for quite some time. We know this. We are friends and family. We've always had this connection with each other, but we've always been pen pals. And when I say that, I mean like all the Hachamim, all the rabbis would write letters to each other, asking each other what's going on here. The Jews from Greece would send etrogim to Europe. We would always have this interconnection. But now we're living under the same roof again, whether it's in Israel or New York or any of these big centers or France or UK, and we're struggling to what it means to live together. And that's one of the biggest issues, because obviously I think it's very important to promote Sephardic Jewry, but it's more important for me, and I think for us to go forward, is to integrate Sephardic Jewry, right? It's important for us to make these stories known so people want to integrate it in their lives. And even integrate traditions, like for example, Mimuna, everyone loves that one, but it's not only about the food culture and the excitement, there's also mentality things as well. I was just briefly talking about how Yom Kippurim and Rosh Hashanah, like the liturgy is drastically different, right? One's very much focused on martyrdom, and the other one is not. It's a bit lighter in that sense. So I really call everyone to kind of like compare, contrast. What do you think we need for the next generation to survive? Because we could say, oh, marriage and integration, that's great. That's only step one, right? My wife is Ashkenazi, I'm Sephardi. That step one is integration, but what we do with the next generation after that, that's more important. And really to get there is to study the history, to study each other, and to really understand each other in a world where we finally succeeded in emancipation, at least in one degree or another. Because we were constantly fighting for emancipation, so we translated what it meant to be Jewish. So for example, in France, under Napoleon, he established a Sanhedrin, which not the Sanhedrin as we think, but he called it a Sanhedrin. And I believe it was like the sixth question or the ninth question is like, how can you be Jewish and French? Or no, sorry, how can you be a Hebrew and a French person? Because you would have dual nationalism, and at that time it didn't exist. So the rabbis in their wisdom said, okay, Hebrew national identity does not exist anymore. We're a Jewish religion with a French nationality. So in search of emancipation, they became a religion. So now we've finally achieved emancipation to a higher degree now, and we need to really understand what does it mean to be a Jew. And we need to understand what it means to be an Am, to be a nation. And that's, the early Sephardic, let's say, I'm calling it Zionist. I don't really care about the term, but what was going on earlier on, all of them, the biggest imperative was for people to study Hebrew. People think of Eliezer ben Yehuda as making like the first, modern dictionary, but they forget about Avigal Lando, who lived in the UK, a Sephardic woman who lived in the UK, who actually wrote an English Hebrew dictionary with new Hebrew words for glasses and this and that. And people don't know that story. And she wrote that book 17 years before Ben Yehuda was even born, right? And they even forget when they talk about Ben Yehuda, they think, oh, he invented the language and this and that, but they also forget about the Sephardim that helped him, right? It's not about like trying to take ownership. It's about sharing the Jewish experience, because it couldn't have existed without them. Even when people talk about Hebrew grammar, during the Haskalah movement, a lot of their works were based on Sephardic grammarians. So, we all build off each other, and we need to realize that and reckon with that and bring it back into the fold, instead of saying, oh, these are lesser, or these are I'm better than them, or that. It's like, no. you're missing the
Yeah.
larger history where we're always connected, we're always pen pals. This is the Jewish experience.
Right. Now, when you were working for the World Jewish Congress, you devised a touring exhibition, and can you tell us a bit about it and why you did that?
So the reason why I did that, actually, it started before October 7th. It was really important to me for this reason we're talking about people learning about Jews in the Middle East and North Africa. And more so, we live in a world of black and white, right? It's a lot of the kids on campus, or people in general, are saying, "Oh, Israel's a colonial state. All of them are from Europe and this and that." And I said, I'm not going to get into this debate because I think this dichotomy is nonsense to begin with. Even when people call Spain a European country, I think the dichotomy is kind of silly, because for me, Sepharad is Al-Andalus. That's Islamic Spain. It's part of a
Mm,
different, category. That's a longer conversation I'm happy to have after. But, you know, they have this black and white dichotomy because they live in a world of boxes. And what I wanted to do is give the history of Jews in the Middle East and North Africa. And there are also Ashkenazim as well who live in the Middle East and North Africa, and I can talk about them as well. And their contributions in the modern period. I consider the modern period the Tanzimat era, which is when the Ottomans were trying to cozy up with the Europeans. This is my interpretation. Some people might disagree with it. When they're trying to
mm,
cozy up with the Europeans and tell them, look, we're modernizing, we're going to give rights to the minorities like the Christians and the Jews, like let's do more trade, let's figure this out. So when that
mm,
happened, Jews had more accessibility to do things, and Alliance came, the French schools, and we also started our own institutions for higher education, and we were able to excel further than before. And
mm,
during that acceleration, we helped join in the Pan-Arabist movement, or the Nahda, which was earlier before it was officially Pan-Arabist movement, and have feminist groups help them. We also wrote modern Arabic works that weren't Islamic and was just secular in a sense. And we were really part of this narrative and project. And one of the first films that were ever produced in North Africa was actually by a Tunisian Jew and his daughter actually wrote the first film.
that's
Um,
right.
and then the same thing with, in Iraq, was actually the first film was written by a Jew, first finance minister. We can go on and go on. It's on the website. I'm happy to show it. I'll show it quickly now, just for everyone to know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll show the website, and then I'll show a bit of the exhibition. But it has like a bunch of countries and contributions of, Jews have done. And I started from that period because obviously you could always go further back.
Mhm.
And it's really important to kind of, can you see actually what I'm showing, or I didn't push the button?
No, 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 nothing's
Oh, I was
appeared.
scrolling right. Okay,
Now,
now we're
yeah,
good. Okay, great. So,
yeah.
I really wanted people to understand not only just non-Jews, but Jews as well. Everyone needs to know, because this is not Sephardic history. This is not Middle Eastern Jewish history. This is Jewish history. Stop. That's it, right?
Mm,
And we need to
mhm.
really internalize it. And that's something that I really think is important, that we need to internalize it. Obviously, I'll be talking about Sephardic identity quite often because the imbalance, as you said, the Ashken normativity, the imbalance is there. But I hope in the next 3 years, I'll never use that word again until we get to that equal, right? Until it's Jewish history. It's no longer Sephardic history, no longer Middle Eastern Jewish history. It's just plainly Jewish history.
Yes,
And all our contributions are important to what we contribute to these societies. And at the same
right.
time, obviously on the surface level, I just wanted people to know that these people existed. But the reality is, at a certain time, some of these people were kicked out.
Yeah,
And it's not up to me to tell them that part of the story. Sometimes it happens and it just needs to be said in the story itself. But the thing is, once you kind of force feed someone information, they're going to reject it or they're going to forget it. But as I
mm,
said earlier about an appetizer, what all these Instagram influencers are doing, once you give them an appetizer, they're hungry for more. They're going to wonder
mhm.
what happened to this person that
Yeah,
contributed so much to society, and then they'll learn the sad, dark history of it didn't matter. At the end of the day, you were still Jewish. It didn't matter
right.
how much you had fealty to the country. Layla Murad even converted to
Islam. Yeah.
um, and it didn't matter. And she never recovered after she was accused of being a Zionist spy and all this nonsense. She never
Mm,
recovered. She never recorded music again. And if I have it correctly, she actually recorded the um, early Egyptian national anthem, not the
right.
not the King's one, the one after that.
Yeah.
King's
Yeah.
one we actually still sing in the synagogue. That's another fun thing. But
Yeah.
so
But you
these are
still think of the issue of the Jewish refugees, the fact that they were kicked out from Arab countries. It is important to you, isn't it? But is your approach sort of softly, softly to be subtle about it, just introduce people to little snippets?
yeah.
Uh,
So the way that I see this, and it goes back to what I was saying before about the victim mentality thing. I don't want to be, we have so many different types of refugees in the world. Sadly, 2 years ago, or maybe a bit more, we had the Afghan refugees.
mm,
Hear no one talking about them anymore? Not really. We're refugees. We had this issue, over 70 years ago. No one's going to care about us being refugees aside from us, right?
mm,
The thing is, that shouldn't be our identity. And that was the point of this, to show that we're more than refugees. We contribute to society. We were pillars of society. And sadly, we were tossed aside, but now we're taking it to where we need to be, where we feel secure, whether
mm,
it's in the States or Israel. I don't know if I could say that about Europe anymore, but America might be going there. We'll see. But where we feel secure, where people want our contributions, and we have contributions because our contributions isn't just complaining all the time, right? There's more to Jewish identity than that, and that's the important thing. So while we understand and we remember our history, right? It's about what we do with that history and that knowledge. So it's
mm,
important to remember that we were refugees, but we weren't always refugees, right? That's not how we always think about it. We think about ourselves like when we left Egypt. We weren't refugees. We made an exodus. We left and we made something of ourselves. And that's how
mm,
it's always been the experience. I always joke around like, oh, it's just a Tuesday for the Jews, right? This is just a reoccurring theme. We get kicked out of a country and we continue. And like, it was very funny. Me and my wife, we got married and we had our first kid. And the first thing we did was like, okay, it's a baby, but let's get a passport. Because we all have that similar experience. She's Ashkenaz, I'm Sephardi, but we know the situation, I didn't foresee the current situations now as things are progressing in America now, and hopefully things will get better. I have the optimism. I love this country, but um, there's this idea of like we're gonna have to get ready at some point. And I'm not
mm,
saying people should flee their countries now. I don't know anyone's situation or whatever it is, but the reality is that's not who we are. We're not victims. We remember the story, shomer v'zachor, keep it with you and remember it. But don't
mm.
make it the whole identity of who you are.
Right, right, I'm with you. So just to talk a little bit about your engagement with Twitter and with current politics, if you like.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I'm happy.
yeah, I mean, what made you kind of get involved? Because it's not often that you get rabbis who are kind of interacting on Twitter or
Sometimes
X.
I'll admit sometimes I'm not so rabbinic when I should be, right? It gets very messy there. But the reality is that I sit there and I'm scrolling through because October 7 it was a necessity to be on Twitter to see what's going on.
Yeah,
And after the after events, obviously not on October 7 because that was Yom Tov and Shabbat, but I wanted to see what was going on. And then I made an early post about the sad truths after what happens in an event like this. Sadly, I don't remember the exact terminology that I used, but I said along the lines of what happens after this is a Jew in France will be killed, which is always happens. Sad reality, it just happens. Um, Jewish identity is tarnished in a sense where people deny who we are, and the truth just dies. And the reality is, a lot of people felt energized to kind of combat whatever is going on. And a lot of times, and I'm going to be talking a little not nice about the Hasbara movement, or I don't know if it's a movement. Yeah, people think it is, but it's really not an organized thing. But you have a lot of these people who talk about Israel in a very what I call cherry tomato fashion, which is they defend Israel by saying, "Oh, Israel invented cherry tomatoes and the USB stick and all this nonsense," which obviously it's great contributions, but that's not why someone should care about Israel, right? Or what is Jewish identity? It's not, oh, because we survived the Holocaust or fighting anti-Semitism. Jewish identity is, like I said earlier, is beyond this negative Judaism. And I felt a lot of people didn't understand what it means to be Jewish. And a lot of people were doing also misinformation on Israel as well. Whether I agree with everything Israel does or not is irrelevant, but some of the stuff is just completely false about Israel, right?
mm,
Even this the concept that Israel was gifted the Israel, the Jews were gifted Israel because of what happened in the Shoah is just a complete lie, right? Because right after it was established, the British didn't help them. There was an arms embargo by them, the U.S. and France, and technically the UK aided the Jordanians, right? What makes a state is how you defend your land, right? That's just a sad reality, and hopefully people respect those borders. So there are these like fundamental truths that were just being distorted. And I also want, a lot of times I write, it's not for the what I would say the people with a stubborn heart, right? It's for the Jewish community that's open and willing to listen, because those are the people that want to listen and learn, and arm them with the material to understand what Jewish identity is to themselves, right? As I said earlier, we were, because of emancipation, we're using these Judeo Christian terms like religion when it doesn't even apply to us, right? Even in Hebrew, in like Israeli Hebrew, when you hear the word religion, how do you translate it into Hebrew? I don't mean to put you on the spot. If you know it, good. If not, fine. That, right? But what does it actually mean? It means law. It's a Persian word for law. It's an ancient Persian word for law that we first wrote down in Megillat Esther, right? So we're very legalistic people, and historically we've always been mocked for that, right? That's even in the New Testament, and even when they would you have this like famous statue of synagoga and what was it, synagoga and ooh, it's like a famous, I could find it later, but it's a dichotomy between Christians and Jews, and synagogue has like the blindness of the law, and then the church has like the faith and all this type of stuff. So like
Yeah.
this is who we are. We're a people of law. We're a legalistic people. And what does it mean to be a legalistic people? Well, that means we're bound by a nation. We have these like things, and we have to understand what it means to be a people.
Right.
And we can't just have our people, our identity being told by someone else onto us, right?
Right.
We know who we are. And not even that, I can't tell you who we are. We have the Torah, right? We have rabbinic literature that tells us who we are. I can't decide if we're X or Y. Don't listen to me, listen to the text.
Right.
So
Okay.
I'm not the arbiter of truth. I just present the source, and this is what the reality is. And a lot of people don't know, they sadly haven't got their Jewish education to really frame it that way and to understand it that way on a deeper level.
Right. Okay. So, as I mentioned before, you started this Substack column, "Struggling in the Wilderness," and presumably this is a way of expressing yourself about Judaism. It's debunking the myths, and it's exploring certain themes. Um,
Yeah,
I, I'm going to ask people, if they want to ask questions, please do write them in the chat. No, and you were mentioning that you had this comparison between shalom and salam. Can you just talk through that very quickly before we go to questions?
yeah, of course, of course. I'll try to do it briefly, but because I know we're getting close to that time. I'm happy to stay longer, by the way. I'm happy to
Yeah,
talk longer.
thank
I don't
you.
waste anyone's time. But when it comes to words like shalom, right? People think it just plainly means peace. And the thing is, there's a deeper value there that we don't think about. And that value is shalem, right? You pay, it's a payment, right? It's to make complete, shalem. It's shalom, shalem, it's to make whole. And what does it really mean to make whole? And what does that have to do with peace or hello and goodbye? There's a deeper level of what shalom means once you understand the etymology of the word. And then in the article itself, I made a comparison to salam, which is also a Semitic language, also has the same root word, the same shoresh, but it means something a little bit different because it's a different Semitic family tree, and it's a different heritage of what they've dealt with, and that kind of created a different translation of the word. So pre-Quranic poetry, it's still talking about the same thing. So it's very consistent from pre-Quranic literature till after, and it means submission, because for them, peace in that sense meant to submit to the other tribe. Because if you have tribal warfare, you can hide, you can do this. You need absolute submission, so no one can really fight anymore. But living in an agricultural society, which, when you live in the breadbasket of the Middle East, which is the Levant, you have more strong townships. And there is no running away, there is no guerrilla warfare. The relationships need to be deep. And that's why even with Shlomo HaMelech, when he builds the uh, the Bet Mikdash and is also his kingdom, he makes a deal with Hiram and he gives him the taxes from Jewish townships to kind of cement this peace that they had. So yeah. And he also is the combiner of the nation. That's what we call Shlomo, right? He combines, he makes it whole, the northern and the southern tribes. So
Yeah, that's fascinating because there is so much sort of flattening of, I think the differences between Jews and Arabs, oh, they're all Semites and
yeah,
they share a common culture, but it's not true. There's even differences in the language.
yeah.
And
And it gets
yeah,
deeper, and it doesn't. The thing is, I once made a post about the golden age of Spain, and how it's kind of like a farce. It's an invention by the uh, the Enlightenment, Jewish Enlightenment movement, the Wissenschaft movement. Um, they actually invented it because they wanted emancipation. So they
yeah,
actually, it's a longer story. I don't want to get too deep into it, but we never
yeah.
referred to it as a golden age until the Ashkenazim in Europe and Germany did. And the reason why they did it was very noble because they wanted to show the Christians at the time, look, if you give us emancipation like the Jews had in Al-Andalus, look how much we can contribute through our,
Yes.
our academic rigor and all these things. And even though I say it's a farce and the golden age didn't really exist, obviously there were good times, there were bad times. What is a good time? It's between Diet Coke and Coke, right? So it's still Coke. I don't recommend it. So, but the thing is, gold is malleable, right?
Mm,
Gold is what we make it. So whatever relationship we have with the Arab or Islamic or Muslim community, we have the choice to make that myth and make it deeper and make
right.
it important and make it valuable. Harambam Maimonides writes when talking about monotheism, about Islam and Christianity and Judaism, he said it's a blessing because now the world has the Torah and understands monotheism and understand the aloneness, the oneness of God through
Mm,
that. Even with
mm,
all their troubles, he was able to see the beauty in it, which it is
yeah.
beautiful. Monotheism, I love it. It's great. I highly recommend it. Good stuff. But so it really it's what we make of it.
Okay,
There are other myths that we can deconstruct, like there was no like the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire didn't welcome the Jews. He didn't say, "Oh, Spain they lost whatever." Like he's stupid for getting rid of his riches. He never said that. It's also an Enlightenment movement creation. It's not in the
oh,
text.
okay. I didn't know that. So they exaggerated his generosity, and they said, well, he took
Because
them in. Yeah, and he said,
and even the thing is,
"You're
even when it was
stupid, you Spaniards, for kicking out the Jews." So
exactly the thing is, but even some of the Jews at the time they wrote something similar, but it was obvious that it was more of a, thank God we have this. We're safe here. Obviously
mhm,
it's not 100%. It was Kapsali who wrote it in Seder Zutra,
mhm,
right? Zutra, I think, or Zuta. I don't remember.
mhm.
Regardless, he writes it. He writes that like, oh, they welcomed us. He didn't give it, but then later on they expanded on the actual quote and this and that. But
Yeah.
regardless, if you look at his history, he's a Romaniote Jew. And if you're a Romanio Jew in the Ottoman Empire, you had the worst time ever. Because what they would do is they depopulated the Romanio Jewish community and they put Sephardim there and they kind of mixed everyone around. So his community was actually persecuted, but he still complimented it because it's better than what they lived under the Orthodox Christians.
What was the name of this person who wrote
Eliyahu Kapsali.
Kapsali? Okay, so he's sort of idealized the situation. He
And
sort
I'm
of
happy to give you the exact quote in his text,
yeah,
and you can compare it to
yeah,
what the actual Encyclopedia Judaicus is, where the original quote comes from, and you're going to
right.
see it's completely different.
Okay, that's wonderful. Well, I really enjoyed talking to you, Isaac. I think there is a question from Natasha. Which diaspora communities, France, US, Israel, are most active in preserving Lebanese Jewish heritage?
I don't want to get in trouble. I don't know that, but it depends on what preservation really means, right? So in my community in Brooklyn, we publish a lot of books, of like Sidurim, Mahsurim, things like of that nature. So there is a preservation going on there. Can more be done? Of course. Are
Mm,
we doing it?
yeah.
Sadly, no. But there are websites on Lebanese Jewry. It's in Hebrew. I have a friend that's working on it, Avraham Zetouni. So there are people who, we kind of wait for this big moment or big organization to kind of do something. But at the end of the day, it takes someone like
Yeah,
to start that website, to just do what you need to do, ask the questions and move forward. Uh,
right.
and I think, the sad reality, not so much. Thank God, the Bet Knesset has produced a lot of the Sifrei Kodesh, like the Mahsaf and all that stuff. So
Yeah. Mm-mm. But it's always down to somebody who's
always down to
motivated to
somebody,
do the
exactly.
work.
But also,
Yeah.
it's kind of like how I kind of view it the same way that I view how Judeo-Spanish disappeared in Latin America. It's like when it's so similar, it kind
Mm.
of doesn't exist anymore. So, if you have like the Lebanese community with the Jews from Damascus and Halab and this and that, at some point it's like, okay, we can maintain some certain aspects, but more or less we're very similar. And there'll be accents, but
Yeah.
it's not enough to become a language. I would call it like there's accents, but not a language.
Yeah. 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 So there was Eitan pointed out, we were talking about
Oh,
cuisine.
yeah.
He pointed out that kubba is a meatball wrapped in semolina, if anyone is wondering. And Amy says it can also be made with ground rice.
And I recommend doing it with a little bit of meat in the semolina before you fry it. We can go into grave detail about the kibbeh. I didn't want to go too much into detail. But before you fry it, I don't recommend frying anything straight with the rice or straight with the semolina. You should mix a little meat with it.
So in your household, does Sephardi cooking dominate? I mean, I know your wife is Ashkenazi.
So, she's actually cooks Sephardic food now, so she's good. But she also cooks, yeah, I don't mind the ethnic cuisine, the exotic foods of the Ashkenazim, I'll try it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
but no, but
yeah.
in the beginning, I was very much like the cook of the house because of the way things were set up in the house. I love to cook. I have a whole wall of cookbooks. But it's something that me and my wife share together. And she also cooks like Sephardic cuisine as well. So one day I come home, she gets very excited getting me fresh bamia, which is okra.
Yeah.
And you can get fresh bamia and it's like big. You can't really use it. It's like, what am I supposed to do with it? She's like, make bamia. What do you mean? So she doesn't know, like we get the frozen one for whatever reason. So then she's like, you know what? I'm just gonna make it myself. And then she made it and it was great. And now we just do that. So we share and
No,
that's
for her.
important.
She knows what's tasty. I think
Yeah.
that's the truth.
Luckily enough, a lot of our stuff is tasty, so it's fine by me.
I'm sure. I'm sure, yeah. That's great. So I don't see any more questions there, but you've given us a lot of food for thought, actually. And I mean, we're living through very difficult times, so I think it's important for you to be out there on social media, talking about Jews and their identity and what's correct and what's myth in history and all this sort of thing and all the current challenges. I think it's wonderful what you're doing.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And just a plug for your Substack column once again, which is called Struggling in the Wilderness. Um, and I think Lawrence has put it in the chat. So anyone can open a Substack account, and if you're not familiar with Substack, you can follow people who write on Substack. So look out for Struggling in the Wilderness, Isaac Choua. Follow him. Follow me too, because I'm
Uh-huh.
writing the Substack. You can follow all your favorite authors, and I think it's an excellent medium. So you can say whatever you like, and no one's going to criticize you.
And feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to answer questions or whatever it is. And I appreciate everyone being here. It was so much.
Okay, that's lovely.
What adverts are about
Uh,
questions?
so what was that?
Adverts are about questions.
I think we'll have the adverts, shall we? And then we'll open up to, to everybody so we can unmute everybody so that they can say whatever they want to say off the record. Um, so we're going to have our usual commercial break, which is everything that's in store for us this autumn. So Lawrence is just putting it up.
So it's in sequence. There we are.
There we go. So this is tonight. my chat with Isaac. And the next one is Jews of Mosul, which is the 21st of October. There's a little bit of a gap because of Sukkot. Then we have something on Baghdad's Jewish musicians with Regine Basha. Then our big commemoration on the 20th of November, which is online and in person at JW3 in London. And we also have a program for December. So I'd just like to thank Isaac once again for a wonderful conversation. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us and to wish everyone Gemar Chatima Tova for tomorrow, all those who are observing Yom Kippur. And if anyone wants to
Okay, I'll stop recording.
say thank you or whatever they want to say,